Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Gift of the Gab. I'm Ben.
And I'm Tia.
And we're back with another episode of The Gift of the Gab. Well, it's just me. There's no Tia at this episode. She's left me alone. She's abandoned me. Deserted. No, I'm just holding it down for this week's episode and she'll be back next week, we hope. But she should be back next week. So tune in for that. Don't click off this video. I'm going to hold it down. You need to trust me. And without further ado, we're going to begin. It's almost Christmas. Is that your favorite time of the year, Ben? I think so. I like Christmas. It's a festive holiday. We're like 13 days away. Let us know, or let me know, what your favorite, what your favorite holiday is of the year. Because Christmas is, I think, my favorite. It's the best time of the year. The year's coming to an end. You get to eat, which is my favorite pastime. And you, get to see family, see friends maybe, or even give gifts. Lovely if you celebrate. And if you don't celebrate, let us know how you spend the day off as well. So I'll jump into the solo dolo episode of... Oh, have I even said this is episode 26 of The Gift of the Gab? I'm even forgetting where I am. But if I haven't said it, now you know. So, in top news, in breaking news, the headline news anyway, is that the Zodiac killer, one of his ciphers has been cracked. So code breakers have cracked a 340 character cipher 51 years after it was purportedly sent to the San Francisco Chronicle by the so-called Zodiac killer, the FBI confirmed. So one of the most infamous serial killers who operated in Northern California from at least the late 1960s to the early 1970s. And I like to watch a lot of murder mystery podcasts. I get to talk about it a little bit more because I'm here alone. But yeah, I like to watch a lot of like murder mystery podcasts, and I don't know why. I just find them intriguing, or like I like learning about the cases. But the Zodiac Killer is one I'm sure many of you have come across, whether that's on Netflix or whether you've seen documentaries, movies. Like, he's one of the most infamous killers. So the killer, the Zodiac Killer, who was never caught, murdered 5 people in stabbings and shootings that terrorized San Francisco Bay Area. However, he claimed to have killed 37 people in total, although only 5 were confirmed. The message was one of several sent to newspapers during the killing spree at the time, and when the code breakers decoded it, part of it read, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise, all the sooner because I now have slaves to work for me." And what made them think that this is definitely what the code says, because there was an in-depth YouTube video that they made that I'll talk about later about how they broke the code. What made them realize that this was probably the code, that this was what the message was reading, was that I think during the time of the killings, there was a news interview in which someone posing as the Zodiac Killer phoned in and said that him speaking about himself, pretending to be the Zodiac Killer, said he wasn't well and that he didn't want to die in the gas chamber or something like that. I can't quote it word for word, but something along those lines. And this message, this code that's been broken, responds directly to that, and saying that he wasn't scared of the gas chamber. And if you think about it, 51 years and he still hasn't been caught, and he's still at large if he is alive. It's quite terrifying. So in a video posted on YouTube, Virginia web-based designer David Oranchak says he cracked the cipher along with Australian applied mathematician Sam Blake and Belgian Jarl van Eyck, who is a warehouse manager and a code-breaking software engineer. But I would advise you to watch the video. Just type in Zodiac Killer cipher and crack this. It's the top story right now this week. And it took 51 years to crack this code. I think there was an earlier one which was cracked quite soon after, whilst the Zodiac Killer was, I guess, still on his spree. But after that, the Zodiac Killer, I guess, upped the difficulty in which he codes his messages. And obviously he's toying with the media, and it's really weird that like serial killers and all of the killings, like people are obsessed with it. And like even when like real crime has become like one of the leading podcast genres, and even I listen to it, and it's just something about wanting to know what separates, I guess, a regular human being from a serial killer, that just makes you more fascinated in learning about why people, like what makes people snap and why do they snap, and how they build the case against them. And a lot of underlying similarities in a lot of serial killer cases usually stems from abuse. Not that it negates or it justifies their actions, but it really shows that like the mistreatment of a youth or a child can really have an impact on their future or their ability to integrate into society as an adult. Because an underlying theme is molestation and child abuse that is caused upon the serial killers before they were serial killers, obviously, and then they go out and inflict even worse on the general population of people. But yeah, I would advise you, if you're into true crime podcasts and things like that, there's definitely a load of podcasts that you can listen to, and a load of articles you can read, a load of documentaries you can follow. But let me know if you're also interested in true crime or in true crime stories, because I like listening. But yeah, so well done to those gentlemen who cracked the code, and they gave a shout out to many people who helped, and this like really advanced code breaking software anyway that I couldn't understand, but it seemed very interesting. But in more morbid news, the Orange Man, Donald Trump himself. As Donald Trump stays in the White House, Wayne, his administration is racing through a string of federal executions. At the time of recording, 5 executions are scheduled before President-elect Joe Biden's 20th January inauguration, breaking a 130-year-old precedent of pausing executions amid a presidential transition. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have expressed wanting to bring the end to federal executions and urging states to also do the same. I think Kamala has been more unwavering in her support of that. She has consistently voiced the view of opposing the death penalty. She said, "My entire career I've been personally opposed to the death penalty." But advocates on both sides say her actual approach to cases involving the death penalty has been far more complicated. And this has caused issue for Kamala Harris and also Joe Biden's support of the crime bill, which expanded the amount of crimes that could be punishable by death for. Biden's position on the issue has fluctuated throughout his career, although both are currently opposing the death penalty and support federal executions being abolished. But that is different from state executions. And Americans, I know some of you are listening, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the federal government can seek the death penalty for people, and then the states can also seek the death penalty for people. And those are two different things. It seems that the federal one is quite rare, and presidents don't usually do that. I think the last one happened in 2003, and that was under President Bush. And I think one of them was the Oklahoma bombing suspect, or they seek the death penalty for him. But presidents generally don't tend to enforce the death penalty, especially under a presidential transition. As Trump has shown, he likes to be the first to do many things, including be a big loser in office, but that's for another day. It really does make you wonder, is Trump's motivation to speed up these executions, is that motivated politically? And so I'll jump back into it. So far, 2 out of the 5 planned executions have taken place, being Brandon Bernard and Alfred Bourgeois. If all 5 go ahead, Trump's going to be the country's most prolific execution president in more than a century, overseeing the executions of 13 death row inmates since July of this year. That is like ridiculous. The 5 executions began this week, starting with 40-year-old Brandon Bernard, who was put to death at a penitentiary in Indiana, I believe by lethal injection. This has received a lot of media attention, and I'm going to go through some of the details with you. And also, at the time of shooting, Alfred Bourgeois, I believe that's how you pronounce his surname, was also executed yesterday, so on the 11th of December. after, I guess, attempts to halt the execution didn't prevail. They did execute him. So, but the case of Brandon Bernard we'll go through during this episode. So tune in and put your listening hat on and just listen to my voice as I talk you through this case. So when Bernard was 18, he and his co-conspirators robbed and abducted Todd and Stacey Bagley, 2 youth ministers who were on a military reservation at the time. The couple was locked in the trunk of their car when Bernard's accomplice, Christopher Villalva, shot both victims in the head, killing Todd instantly. And here's where I guess the majority of the case lies on this point. Bernard then set fire to the trunk of the car and to, I guess, dispose of the evidence. So the government prosecutors told the jury that Stacey died because of the fire that Bernard started. Although Villalva had shot both Todd and Stacey in the head, they argued that there was evidence of soot in Stacey's lungs, therefore indicating she was alive at the time the car was set on fire, and for that reason they asked jurors to give the death penalty. But after the trial, an independent medical examiner hired by the defense determined that Stacey was medically dead before the fire. Also, when Bernard's legal team filed a stay of execution in November, they alleged the government withheld evidence that could have influenced the jury into sentencing Bernard to life in prison instead. The court filing argues that expert evidence that Bernard occupied the gang's lowest rung would have most certainly persuaded at least one juror to vote for life. The defense also argued that Bernard was fearful of Villalva and followed his orders. So I have to note that Christopher Villalva was executed earlier this year in September, I believe, for his role in the crime committed. And it's not just the defense team that wanted to halt Bernard's execution, actually. So with the new information, 5 out of the 9 surviving jurors said that they would change the sentence to life in prison rather than capital punishment. And also, the former jury foreperson Calvin Kruger said he now supports a life sentence because Bernard was not the ringleader behind the offences but a follower, which brings to the point of what the defence was arguing, that if the government didn't hide, or the government prosecutors or whatever didn't hide that information that he was a low-level gang member, that might have influenced the jurors' perception of him into thinking that he wasn't the orchestrator behind the crime, the terrible crime. Angela Moore, and this is where the more surprisingly comes in, Angela Moore, who was the federal prosecutor who fought off an appeal to overturn the sentence of death, thereby defending the sentence of death at the time for Brandon Bernard, is now objecting to the execution of Brandon Bernard. She told CBS News she changed her stance because of the legal reasons aside from her own personal beliefs. It's the evidence and what we found out since that has changed her beliefs, she said. Mr. Bernard did not shoot and kill the victims in this case. She is quoted to have said, "The case has even received bipartisan support from politicians, so Republicans and Democrats. Some of them have come out to support a stay of execution and appeals for clemency in order to halt the execution of Brandon Bernard. Obviously, at this time of recording this, we know that those attempts were unsuccessful and that he was indeed executed. The celebrities, including Kim Kardashian, called for leniency as she and her team continued to fight for criminal justice reform. She posted about an emotional call that she had with Brandon on the day of his execution and how devastated she felt afterwards, after he wasn't granted a stay of execution and he was executed. So it brings to the question, is America backwards? It's really weird that one of the leading countries, or if not the leading or most powerful country in the world that claims to be this modern country, freedom for all, still enforces the death penalty when such a large proportion of the world don't. And is it an archaic punishment? Because there can be mistakes with the death penalty. Is it too final? My thoughts on the death penalty, I think they've gone back and forth because I wouldn't want to be involved in deciding whether someone lives or dies, and I don't think the government should have that power. But then you have to think about the victims, and then you just start to spiral into a world of who decides who should live or die, because it should be only God. But yeah, back to Angela Moore. She says that Brandon was seen less for his youth and more for his race. So another troubling fact revealed by recent research is that people tend to view black boys like Brandon as more blameworthy than their white counterparts, even when other relevant circumstances are identical. One study showed that black boys are misperceived as older relative to their peers of other races. Black teens like Brandon are systematically denied the benefit of their youth, which is outweighed by their race in the eyes of police, prosecutors, judges, and jurors. Angela Lamore also went on to say that through time and experience, she came to appreciate that a teenager who took part in terrible crimes may transform into a thoughtful adult. From everything that she's read, it appears that Brandon is such a person. Someone who, even in prison, maintained rich relationships with loved ones and worked to find meaning in his life by helping at-risk teenagers avoid a criminal path. It's worth noting also that in his 20 plus years in prison and on death row, he never received a single disciplinary write-up. She also says that in the 20 years since Brandon was sent to death row, science has made dramatic strides in understanding the youthful brain. In the year 2000, it was not widely appreciated that the brain remains physically immature well past the age of 18. But since then, science has established the structures of the brain are not fully developed in young men until they are 25 or 26. And that brings another question to my mind of, should 18 actually be like the age we're considered as adults? And why is it 18? I'm guessing the determined 18 was the age of an adult based on previous research of when the brain develops. But if new findings have said that the brain in at least men don't fully develop to 25 and 26, why do we allow 18-year-olds to make like life-changing decisions at such a young age? And why hasn't this been changed? Because it seems to be quite a universal accepted concept that by at least the age of 18 or sometimes 21, that people are able to do adult, quote unquote, adult things like buy alcohol, sign up to the military, own a gun, drive a car. And like, why are these privileges given to 18-year-olds if research shows that their brain doesn't develop until you're 25 and 26 in men, let's say? I'm guessing it might be even younger for women, because I think the general consensus is that women mature at a younger age than men. But yeah, why 18? Why 18? If anyone knows, tell me in the comments. I'm willing to learn, or I'll do the research myself, either way. But why 18? And do you think 18 is too young to be, I guess, sentenced to death for committing a crime when you're 18, which was the case with Brandon Bernard? I think it's also important to mention that the jurors and a lot of Brandon's advocates don't doubt his guilt in this case, and they're not seeking for him to be released. But they do feel that he should be allowed to live out the rest of his life he should have been allowed to live out the rest of his life in prison. And this brings more important questions again, like, is the death penalty too final? I want people who live in, I guess, countries or states where the death penalty is legal to comment on their views on it, whether they feel yes, it's too final, or no. Because I'm conflicted with it. I just don't like the idea of the government or anyone, including the people who are responsible for killing, deciding when people die. I don't think that should be within human hands necessarily, but I know that my tune would probably change if I was the victim of a crime, or like it affected me or someone I care closely about or someone I care about. And it's hard to be impartial in such a delicate situation. So we also have to remember that there's victims to these devastating crimes. Family and friends of the Bagleys describe the killings as a senseless act of unnecessary evil, and they thank President Trump and the Attorney General William Barr. And they wrote that they grieved for 21 years waiting for justice to be finally served. And if you think about it, it is something that follows you for a long time. As much as the people in death row are obviously fearful of, like, this could be their last year or of life or whatnot, they're out of appeals. Like, the family also has to think, when is this going to be over? And I wonder if it is truly over, and if for some of them, after the people convicted of the crimes are executed, if they get the peace. So Bernard's last words included an apology directed at the victims' families. Villalba also issued an apology before he was executed in September. And Speaking to reporters shortly after the execution, the mother of Todd Bagley, who was one of the victims, became emotional about Bernard's apology, saying it helped heal her heart and that she forgives them being Bernard and Vialva. And can you forgive someone and also want them to die? I think it's a question most of us won't ever know the answer to, and hopefully won't be put in a position to find out. But it is a strange dynamic of forgiving someone but also wanting death. And like, looking from the outside, it seems very juxtapositional, if that's a word. It seems like a juxtaposition, but I guess until you're put in that situation, you don't truly know how you'll feel. This has been a rather morbid topic, hasn't it? But let us know your opinions on it and what you thought. Obviously, 2 out of the 5 planned executions have taken place, and there's also been media outcry about it because 5 of the executions taken place, 4 out of 5 of the executions taken place are of black men. I think one of them is a woman as well, a white woman, and they're saying that the executions are sort of politically motivated, and I kind of see that, like, this rush of executions before Biden and Harris come into power as like a race of Trump's like final act of Trump, for lack of a better word, just something for him to do. And it seems like, although these people are convicted of crimes, like, he looks like he's politically motivated to carry out these executions and break the traditional pausing executions amid a presidential transition, which has been in the case for the past 130 years. And this seems wrong. And the fact that 4 out of 5 of them are black has also caused outcry, because previously, earlier this year in the summer, when executions were scheduled, the majority of people being executed were white, and that was during a time of heightened racial tension, when obviously Black Lives Matter movement was at its highest after the killing of George Floyd. And it makes you think, like, why now, after that period, when although protests are still happening, but it's not as intense as it was, does Trump seem to be scheduling the execution of mostly black people? Is that just the order of the list that it's in, or is there political motivation behind it? It makes you wonder, because I don't trust Trump as far as I can throw him, and that wouldn't be very far because he's quite a large man, isn't he? Big bodied, big boned, as they would like me to call him. That's been quite some quite morbid stories, and I hope it's got you thinking. Let us know if you want more of this type of content, where we just sort of go through a case and, give our opinion on it, or give our conflicted opinion on it. As you can see, I'm still torn, but I just don't believe I don't believe people should be taking over people's lives, including the people who did the killing in the first place. But yeah, so we'll see what happens with the remaining planned executions, and it's like weird that people's lives are in the balance like that. We shall move on to what's been happening elsewhere across the pond in the UK. As you know, the vaccine was approved in the UK and it's still making headlines. I think it's close to approval in America as well. Many people are still uncertain about whether they'll take the vaccine, and misinformation continues to flood social media. So it's very important you do your own research, and that doesn't just include going onto the Shade Borough or the Shade Room and just doing your research from there, because those aren't, I'm sorry, those sources they're not the best sources, especially the comment section. And I understand that the current news sources like the BBC, ITV, CNN or whatnot, Fox, aren't always trustworthy, and they aren't actually accurate with their story. And sometimes the retractal of a story doesn't make as big as headline as the wrongly reported story. But you have to remember, some of these social media news sites, or I guess information sites, they aren't regulated at all, and there's no one necessarily stopping them, apart from sometimes Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, from posting incorrect information or from allowing users with following to post incorrect information. So it's important you do your own research and make an informed decision It's not mandatory yet, so you have the choice to make an informed decision, but make your decision and make it informed. Don't just follow, don't be a sheep, and do really think about what is going on and the situation of whether you think you will be really ill from coronavirus or not. It's kind of like a community effort. This vaccine is not just to protect you, it's to protect the community. But yeah, I'll leave you with that and I'll move on to Brexit. Brexit is back in the headlines for the UK, obviously, because the deadline for Britain making a deal with the EU approaches on the 31st of December, and there's still significant differences between the EU and the UK, essentially. And those differences remaining 3 key areas. So a level playing field, I guess, and governance and fisheries. It's caused a lot of headlines this week because Boris has gone to Brussels to try and get a deal. He's also had a call with, I guess, the EU chief negotiator. I want to say her name is Ursula, but I could be butchering that. There's still no deal. They both say that there's differences, and they both say it's now looking more likely that there will be no deal. But what also made the headline is that the Ministry of Defence said that 4 Royal Navy patrol boats have been put on standby in case of a no deal scenario, and they are ready to protect UK fishing waters. Obviously there was an outcry about this because it just seemed very hostile. Tory MP Tobias Elwood described the threat as irresponsible, and people have also been accusing Boris of irresponsible behaviour akin to English nationalism. It's crazy over here. I don't know if there'll be a deal. A deal? I don't know if there'll be a deal. I'm gonna put my money on. It's looking tough right now, but I have a feeling someone will give by the 31st of December, because I think both sides want a deal. I think the UK wants a deal more than the EU, so the EU are in a better negotiation, I guess, platform. They got a better leg to stand on, because it's like 27 other countries or however many other countries versus the UK, essentially. Let us know what you think. What should the UK do? And before the 31st, let us know your predictions, whether you think there will be a deal or not. They've said that they've been close to a deal and they're not close to a deal, so I just don't know what to think. But my guess is, a deal is going to come. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that hopefully a deal will come. But that brings us to the dilemmas, where I give fantastic advice. Now, you know who's not here to say that it's bad advice. I give fantastic advice to you about your problems. These dilemmas have been provided from Twitter, courtesy of 6 Brown Chicks. Check them out. And the first is as follows. Life came at me fast. Met a woman, fell in love. Had a 2-week-long affair. Then my girlfriend woke up from her coma, brackets car accident, and I had to bring her home from the hospital. When is the best time to kick the girlfriend out? She's almost able to walk again. Well, it sounds like you won't need to kick her out. You can just wheel her out. That was in poor taste, Ben. That was in such poor taste. But that would make you a very, very cruel person. And I think you have to be honest, you know? It would be easy for me to sit here and berate you for being an idiot. And not really being faithful to your girlfriend. I mean, 2 weeks and you gave up on her? It shows how much you really cared about her. But it would be easy for me to call you out for being a complete imbecile. But I'm not going to do that. You asked for advice, so I'm going to give it ya. As someone I know would say. I think you have to be honest. You know what? If it's really weighing heavy on your heart, I would say it would be really cruel to kick her out as she's doing her physical rehab, her physical therapy. But as soon as she's able, I guess, to be on her own, I guess, or more independent from you, then I think you need to tell her the truth and not mislead her anymore. Because you've already done a crappy thing to her, so you shouldn't prolong her suffering by making her think that you care more than you do, because although you think you might be helping her, you're actually not. Next question. Our sons, 6, 8 and 15, look and act just like my lying, cheating husband. His work wife brought him a plate of food to our house and I snapped. I took our money, changed my phone and moved to New York City to launch my music career. F them all. I feel so good. When to contact the kids again? When to contact the kids again? Why do you want to contact them? Kids, eh? Sometimes they can be a blessing. Sometimes they can just be a pain. Why? You have to ask yourself, why do you want to contact them? Is it worth your time? I mean, your music career is popping. if you can become big, you know what? I got the plan for you. What you need to do is continue with your music career, become big, meet all their favorite rappers, Little Baby, the Baby, Drake, and all of that. Meet all of them. Nicki Minaj, Meg The Stallion, all of them. Meet with them. Cardi B. Make music with them, and they'll want to contact you, even if you don't make music with them. If you just appear in photos as if you know them, trust me, the kids will want to contact you. You won't have to double back and be like, I'm sorry for abandoning you and leaving you with him and not taking care of you. You can just fool them into wanting to be with you by being the cool mom. So yeah, that's my plan for you. Good luck with it. Next question. I got evicted and moved in with my cousin until I'm back on my feet. I babysit her kids while she works. I hooked up with her baby daddy several times and I feel like he wants us to be more serious. We don't use condoms. When to let her know? I don't like secrets. Well, clearly you do like secrets because you've been keeping a rather big one from your cousin. Your own cousin. What did you do? So you've hooked up with her baby daddy. I'm assuming because you call her baby daddy, they're not together. And I think you need to let her know immediately. See, people in this situation, when you're off your feet, you don't need to be on the floor doing the most. If you're off your feet, you need to accept the help that you've been given and be extra courteous and extra nice to the person that is offering you said help, instead of taking advantage of the situation to do something wrong to them. I think you should tell her immediately, and whatever happens to you happens to you, because sometimes you have to learn the hard way. Who doesn't listen must. Everyone say it with me. Feel. But yeah, tell her immediately and see what she does to you. And if you end up back on hard times, just remember you brought it upon yourself. And hopefully that comforting message will warm you up on the streets. If not, oh well. Oh well, that's been it. That's been episode 26 of The Gift of the Gap. I hope I held it down well enough for you, and I hope it was interesting. It was a more serious episode today. Not as much giggles and jokes, but, you know, sometimes we have to put on our big boy pants and our big girl panties and take things seriously. And I'd like to know all your opinions on the things I asked during this episode, so comment below. Even if you're the only one, I'll read and I'll respond. But that's been it. I'm Ben, and Tia is somewhere else, and we've been The Gift of the Gab. No, and this has been The Gift of the Gab. We are BT Small Talk. I butchered the ending, but you love it anyways. Ciao.